Hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 50-plus job sites, including Craigslist and social networks like LinkedIn and Facebook, all with one click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Post a job free at ZipRecruiter.com/Mike. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Mike.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Golic. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Here's what we've got for you today. More shrinkage reaction. Oh, yeah, I said it. Peter King on Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame. We do Next Question with Pro Bowler Gerald McCoy from the Bucs, and we talk to former President Bill Clinton.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
We got Gerald McCoy, NFL stud, in our studio for a couple hours this morning. And then we have William Jefferson Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton, live on the show this morning to weigh in on all matters sports and beyond. So that is a pretty varied show this morning with Mike.
That's pretty cool. I'm looking
is.
forward to that. I definitely am. I know you've had an encounter.
I got to meet President Clinton. Again, there will be no politics discussed in this conversation.
No.
So all the people, you can hold off on all of the, oh my goodness, don't push your agenda down my throat conversation. There'll be no agenda. But I have had a chance to meet him. I did that event where for childhood obesity that I got to host with him and Kobe Bryant. And the ideas that he has, the stuff we talked about with sports, pure sports, fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and that's what we'll do with President Clinton.
I had it was a horrible thing. I had to follow him. There was an event in New York, a couple-day event, and I was a speaker one of the nights to some pretty hoity-toity people.
Yeah.
And all they talked about when I got there, as we were having dinner before I was going to talk, was how good Bill Clinton was the night before.
He's tough to find.
Well, that was, I mean, at that point I got a total.
What were you there to discuss?
The world.
But I mean, what? I'm just trying to imagine what event would have had you there doing a presentation after having had Bill Clinton doing a presentation.
Well, I think his was more a serious presentation. It was a couple of day event, so I was brought in to lighten the mood. Tell some funny stories, Golic. Tell some football stories. Talk about how you got tackled by quarterbacks. Can you do that? Yeah, so that's kind of how it went.
All right, so we have all of that and a whole lot more, but obviously it begins with day 2 of the hashtag shrinkage. It was somewhere in the middle of the day. I'm not sure exactly when the conversation turned to this yesterday, because I was busy doing a lot of I was busy promoting my book on a lot of places, so I wasn't following the news of the day that closely. And all of a sudden, somewhere in the middle of the day, the conversation turned to the possibility that if this investigation of the deflated footballs were to wrap up fairly quickly, and it were to be determined beyond a shadow of a doubt that the head coach of the New England Patriots willfully and knowingly was involved, violated the rules, and violated competitive rules and the competitive spirit of an NFL playoff game, is there any possibility that he would be suspended for the Super Bowl?
No. Me personally, I don't think there's any possibility of that. I think it'll be after the season, whether it's a fine, draft picks, which because there'd be, repeat offenders going back to Spygate, and we're fined and penalized for that with draft picks. I think that's what would happen. And that's you're given this the specificity. I'm having trouble with that word.
Specificity.
Thank you very much. Of it being on Bill Belichick, and I don't think that's going to happen either. I think they as a team will probably be found guilty. I don't know if it'll get specific as to just exactly how the chain of command went to all of a sudden the balls are 2 pounds PSI, and we have our hashtag shrinkage going.
Right. That is a very interesting part of this. Well, I'm about to play you right now maybe the most important thing or the most interesting thing I've heard in this. Because let's face it, all right? Let's separate the world into 3 categories of people. Those of you who played and coached football at the highest level, so you have a level of understanding of it that we do not. Then there are those of us who just have followed the sport from whatever level we have as fans, as reporters, or whatever the case is. So we have our understanding of it, maybe a bit more of the history, but certainly not nearly as much of the inside expertise. And then there's the little tiny fraternity of people who would actually be involved, and you're not even a member of this, in how a ball gets prepared to be played in a game. You were a defensive tackle. The ball really didn't matter to you. How scuffed up it was, how new it was, how inflated it was. You had other things to be concerned with. You weren't worried about that. There's a very small group of people who are. Tim Hasselbeck was a member of that small group. And Tim Hasselbeck appeared on the Football Today podcast yesterday. And if you listen to him tell it, he basically exonerates Bill Belichick. This, to me, is the most important thing you're going to hear all day long. This is Tim Hasselbeck.
There's no reason that a coach would know what the ball specifications are or how it's broken in or anything like that. So this idea that Bill Belichick is somehow cheating or something like that, there's no way Bill Belichick knows anything about this, because he would never, ever be involved in the process. Neither would a quarterback coach or any other offensive coach. The decision on how the balls are broken in and how they're broken in and to what specifications and all of that is completely done by the starting quarterback in the equipment room. That's who does it. That's who works on it. That's who does it. I was on 8 different teams. That was the process everywhere. Now, if the balls were evaluated by the officials and were approved, and then at halftime they were no longer in the same condition as they were when they were approved before the game, then somebody let air out of the football. That's how it works. Because at halftime, both teams' footballs were inspected by the league. So you had the balls provided by New England and the balls provided by Indianapolis inspected at halftime. And there were only an issue with the balls from New England, and there was no issue with those balls before the game.
So listen to what he's saying. He's saying 2 different things. He's not exonerating the Patriots.
No.
He's saying if the facts are what we believe the facts to be, which is the ball's passed inspection before the game and failed inspection at halftime, then someone did something.
Yeah. What Jerry Austin told us yesterday.
But he's also saying, so I guess what my point is, he's not saying, hold on, guys, nothing happened here.
Right.
But what he is saying is, this is something the head coach would not be involved in. So just quickly, my wife Stacy was asking about this yesterday. She said, is Bill Belichick involved? I said, my belief would be nothing happens on that football team that he doesn't know about, right? Literally nothing. He wants up with the ultimate control freak. We just had a story last week that we did about how he'll walk up to any player in the hallway on a random Wednesday and say, who's the third guy in on kick coverage?
Yeah, L3, what's his move? Who'd he beat last week?
And the observation that the players who were interviewed for the story made was that Belichick always knew the answers. He knows everything. So my initial inclination was to say, and that's what I said to Stace, nothing happens on that team that Bill doesn't know.
Yes.
Now, here's Tim Hasselbeck saying this may actually be something Bill doesn't know.
I would lean to you being correct in that thought process. And Tim's right partially, again, just my opinion, that, yes, the coach is not involved in the process. As I've continually say, I've been in the sauna in Philadelphia many times where Jeff Fiegels, the punter, is in there with the footballs, warming them up, manipulating them, softening them up, getting the sheen off of them. He was the one who did it in Philadelphia when I was there.
So he's doing it for the quarterback.
He's doing, you talk about how does the quarterback want the ball, and Jeff was the one who did it. Jeff was the one, he prepared the footballs. So, the process, the coach isn't involved, but that doesn't mean the decision to do it. Now, because there's a difference of what we're talking about here. We're presuming guilt, okay? And if we do that, there's Jeff Fiegel sitting in the sauna preparing a football, which is what everybody does, and there is making the conscious decision we're going to deflate the balls, give it its hashtag shrinkage, because that's the way I like the grip of it. So while the process does not involve the coach, I find it hard to believe that the decision to do it doesn't come from the coach. So that could be a conversation that is had between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick along the conversation of how, the grip, if it's going to be wet, if there's a grip conversation at some point to something as simple as Bill Belichick saying, get the grip how you want it. Do what you have to do to get the grip.
Okay, so let me go back a minute. Someone has to actually physically take the air out of the balls. Now, pardon me for my voice is a little going. Someone has to physically take the air out of the balls. It isn't Bill. It isn't Brady.
No.
It's some equipment kid, right?
Yes.
It's some guy.
But they have to be told.
Right. So my point is, I'm envisioning Brady walking up to the guy. The game is getting started. He's warming up on the field before the game. He's feeling the ball. He's like, and Mike, is it even remotely possible that it is something as innocent as him turning to the kid and saying, take a little air out of these. These feel a little bit too hard. I'd like to get them a little more feel, want a little more leather, whatever term a quarterback would use. He might just either innocently or knowing that he shouldn't, but one way or another say it to the equipment guy, and Bill Belichick be standing somewhere else and not know anything about it and not really be concerned about it. Is that possible? That's how I was envisioning
a lot of it is possible. Now, again, to do that, I mean, unless people just don't know the rules of what's going on, to just walk up and grab a bunch of footballs they're going to be using in a game and start letting air out of them after they've been inspected, is somebody that naive to think I could just go do that and have the balls end up, 2 pounds of PSI below? Or, is that a possibility? Yes. Is it also possible that Bill, not involved in the process, but is the one making the general decision of do what you have to do to get the balls how you want them? And from there, it leaves him. But it came down from him because I'm with you. And we're not singling out Bill Belichick as a head coach who controls everything. There are many head coaches, not only in football, but in all sports, that control and know everything. So this isn't specific to Bill Belichick. But is it beyond Bill Belichick, whatever the conversation about the grip of the ball, if Bill knows everything going on like other coaches, to say, get the ball how you want it no matter what? I mean, so while I can see a situation where Bill's not involved, I find it hard to believe, like you had said, that Bill isn't involved in all decisions.
We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. We are now a full 36 or so hours into this controversy. More than that, I guess, because it really came up right after the game. But from the time that it became a full-blown, and I even hesitate to use the word controversy, but from the time it became seemingly the only thing anyone wanted to talk about, maybe we're 48 hours into it, and I still haven't made up my own mind what I make of it, which is to say, is this the kind of thing – I've heard everything from, well, there's those Patriots. This is the end of Belichick's legacy. This is going to cost him the Hall of Fame. This is going to stay with him forever. Robert Kraft can't let this go on anymore. He has to finally make a statement. The league is going to suspend him for a year. I've heard all of that. Mm-hmm. All the way to, come on, every team does this or stuff like this. They just get caught doing it. There's more of a microscope on them. And this is something that is really not all that far beyond the pale. You know what I mean? There's cheating and then there's cheating. Right. There's holding on every play and saying, let's see them call it. Yeah. And then there's massive steroid use. Yeah. There's somewhere in between. So in your mind, Mike Golic, as a 9-year veteran of the National Football League, which one is this closer to?
I think how I think this is going to play out is, well, there were the Patriots again, trying to cut their corners, trying to get every little edge they can. This is going to follow, and Bill Belichick's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Is going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me ask you this. I mean, you as a player, I'm appealing now
I'm
to
not
your
losing my mind
competitive
over
spirit.
this.
Doesn't bother you.
I didn't say it doesn't bother me. It's cheating. It is cheating. It's different than trapping the ball and acting like you caught it. Derek Jeter acting like he got hit by a baseball. It's different than going out of bounds knowing you touched it but not saying it. That's gamesmanship. A lot of people don't agree with that, but it is, and that's not going to change. This is cheating. This is cheating. Like Spygate was. It's against the rules. Do teams try to steal signals, going all the way back to that, by looking at coaches and trying, whether you're reading lips, whether you're hearing what they're saying, and try and steal things? Yes, but it's illegal to videotape them doing what they did. So
baseball is the same thing.
Well, that's exactly right.
You're not allowed to use binoculars.
But if you can look and steal the sign, more power to you. Steal the sign. But there are rules of how far a line to cross. In Spygate, they crossed the line. Here, if they're found guilty, they crossed that line. So, yes, it is absolutely cheating, and I hear everybody saying it doesn't matter that the game was out of hand. I agree with that. And, again, the 21-point third quarter was after the backup balls were put in use, which were all, inflated to the correct PSI. So when they made the move, everything was fine with the footballs. So that part of it I get, but everybody's saying, but it doesn't matter, it's cheating. No, and I agree with that. It's cheating. They if they're found guilty, they knowingly did this. Somebody did. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who, because it's going to be the organization, and it's going to point to Bill. And I'll say this, if they get penalized for this, I still do not think we're ever going to find out what the actual chain of events happened. It's just going to be, you Patriots are guilty. They're going to give generalities about it, about maybe we don't think we did anything wrong, but this is what the league said. We'll listen to the league, and we move on from there. And they're going to be looked at that way. If they win the Super Bowl, don't win the Super Bowl, they cheat, they have to cut corners, they have to find ways. Do I think they did that? Certainly they did that with Spygate. We'll see what happens here. But I'll also say, and how many players have come out? How many former players and players have come out and said that he should be gone for the year, that he should make it into the Hall of Fame? I'd say about none. Go ask the Colts about this. And all they talk about is they beat us. Nobody's making that, and think what you want about it. Most of the people saying he should not be in the Hall of Fame or should be suspended for a year are people that aren't involved, aren't certainly not players, right? Mm-hmm. They're writers or people outside the game that are saying this. That doesn't mean you're wrong to can't have that opinion. I get that. But I think there are a lot of people within that say, yeah, it's cheating. Didn't make a difference in this game, but it's still cheating. They should be punished for it, and we'll move on. The bottom line for Bill Belichick and the Patriots is it's going to stick with him. It's going to stick with his legacy. But at the end of the day, he's getting in the Hall of Fame.
Well, we'll find that out. We have Peter King coming on today. About an hour from now, Peter will be with us in the Subway Fresh Take Hotline from MMQB. And A, he's a terrific reporter. And B, he is a voter for the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So I really wanted to get Peter on this morning so that we could ask him that question. At what point in the conversation, when you guys were in the room, the way that Hall of Fame thing works, unlike baseball where they all fill out ballots.
Right.
In football, as for those who don't know, they get together in a room, people make presentations for different candidates, and they sit there and they talk, and they kind of hash it out. And from what I'm told, sometimes it can get, relatively heated. And what I want to ask Peter is, how quickly in the conversation about Belichick, after you get to the 3, or maybe it'll be 4, or maybe it'll be more, Super Bowl championships and everything else, how about all the bending of the breaking of the rules part? Right. How quickly does that come up in the discussion, and how does it affect him? So we'll ask Peter that question. One thing I want to ask you that you just said that I think I disagree with is, when you said we're never going to find out the chain of command or whatever it is, but let me ask you this. Do you believe, here's the one thing we need to know. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, how did the air get out of the balls? Which is to say, before the game starts, we know they met specification. Mm-hmm. At halftime, we know they were significantly enough below that it wasn't a function of the cold air or anything else. So the investigation, the first thing they have to find out in the investigation is specifically, how did the air come out of the balls? Mm-hmm. That we're going to find out, right? Mm-hmm. I have to believe the NFL is going to find that out. Yes or no? Do you agree or disagree? Someone has to have physically done it.
Right.
So they're going to have to figure out who that someone was.
They're going to have to. And I'm just telling you right now, in my opinion, no one's going to admit to it.
Well, now you're going to have another. Now if you're going to get a real problem.
Who are they going to interview? They're going to interview the ball boys and whoever. And they're going to
listen, only a certain number of people actually handle the ball.
I agree. And this is what I'm telling you. I think everyone would pass the buck and say, I didn't do it. Even though there's one.
What if the shrinkage fairy come down from on high?
How many times do witnesses just lie? And just prove it. I'm not going to tell you the truth. I'm just telling you.
But I mean, someone ultimately fessed up to shooting the video they weren't supposed to shoot and all that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying if you're the NFL, here's the thing. Now, if I'm the NFL, if I'm Troy Vincent or Adolfo Birch or Roger or whoever it is, Roger's probably not the one running the investigation. But if I walk in there and I say, look, I happen to know, based upon video evidence and other things, that you 4 people are the only ones who handled the footballs between the time Walt Anderson had them and the time they went onto the field.
Yep.
One of the 4 of you has to have done this, and none of them admit it?
And they'll say, well, I didn't do it.
Well, now you got to go to Robert Kraft, and you got to say, look, your organization is stonewalling me. I need to know what happened here. And Kraft has got to go down there and make that happen.
All right. I'm just telling you. The way I see this going is no one's going to admit to it, but the proof is going to be overwhelming. They're going to be found guilty of this, and something will happen to them, and we may never know how it happened, at least not right now. Maybe later, when somebody fesses up down the road. I'm just giving you one of the angles. Another could very well be some guy gives it up, say, yeah, I deflated the footballs. And then obviously the next question is, who told you to do it? And then they go to that person, and that person will say, are you the end of the chain? Obviously, they're going to do that to try and get to the end of the chain. I agree with you. I understand what you're saying. I'm just telling you, I don't know if they're going to get the answer that they want to get.
Let me just now, under no circumstances am I comparing these stories. But when the Mueller report people were doing the investigation into the league and trying to find out did anyone get a tape, they interviewed every person, right? Well, I guess maybe that is the same thing. No one admitted to getting the tape, but could someone have been lying?
Yeah.
I guess that's right. I guess someone could be lying. The point is, in that case, we didn't have hard, fast proof that someone received the tape. Right. There was a phone call the Associated Press reported, but we don't have proof. In this case, we have physics, right? The immutable laws of physics say that the air came out of the ball. We had the ball, it had this much, and now it has this much. We have actual physical proof that someone did this. And we can prove how many people you would have to tell me maybe better than I do, than I know, how many people may have handled the footballs in between that. But it can't be more than 5.
No, it can't be too many.
It's not like 100 people get the ball in those 10 minutes or whatever it is before the game starts. So I don't know. It seems to me they're going to find out. Okay. I think they're going to find out how the air got out of the ball.
They may. I'm just giving you a scenario how they may not.
You're right. If everybody lies about it, now we got ourselves a whole other problem. How do you handle that? Let me take a time out.
I got a way to handle it.
Okay, I'd like to hear your way, and because you can now relate this to almost anything. You know, you're a parent and you're 3 kids and no one acknowledges something.
You're 3 kids, something happened there. I didn't do it. Now what do you do?
Well,
you know what happened?
You punish all of them.
That's exactly right.
And you hope that they turn on each other.
That's where we're going to go.
Okay, so this is going to get, so now we're getting fascinating.
Now we're having fun with something that doesn't,
Hashtag shrinkage, day 2.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
All right, let's get back to what we were saying. So now you're the NFL, whoever it is that's running their investigation. Troy Vincent seems to be the one sort of commenting on it. I don't know if he is the leader of the but whoever it is. You're running the investigation into hashtag shrinkage. And you are able to ascertain. Here are the 2 things we know for certain, right, Mike? I mean, I'm not a detective. You're not a detective. But, I mean, we've all seen Law and Order. So here are the things that we know with absolute certainty. The balls were inflated to a certain pounds per square inch before the game, and they were no longer there. They were far enough away at halftime that it could not have happened by nature. It wasn't physics. Someone let the air out of the balls, right? Do we know that for sure?
I have to believe we know that for sure.
Can we ascertain that with certainty?
I would ascertain.
Okay. There's 1. 2, we know that in the period of time between which the balls are in the hands of
just can't do it.
I can't do this. This is why I had to go to shrinkage yesterday, because no one can have this conversation without giggling. But anyway, from the time Walt Anderson had control of the balls until such time as they actually got on the field, a limited number of people had access to them, right? And we can probably ascertain with certainty how many and who they are, right?
Yes.
We can do that. Can we do that?
Yes, we can do that.
That's item number 2. So now let's get to item number 3. You bring those people into a room, 4 of them, 5 of them, however many people it may be, and you say, did you do it, did you do it, did you do it, did you do it? And they all deny it, which, according to your scenario, you think that's what's going to happen.
I think that's possibly what could happen.
Let's just say that does happen.
Okay.
So now I'm asking you, now what do you do?
Well, listen, I know when I was growing up, me and my 2 brothers, when something went wrong in the household, we banded together and said, we didn't do it. We didn't do it. We didn't do it. And you know what? We all took it on the chin for that.
Nobody ever broke?
Nobody ever broke.
Really?
If anybody was going to break, it has to go to the oldest. It would have to be Bob. The oldest has to be the one to break. Either that, or since I was the youngest, Bob and Greg would have to offer me enough incentive to take the bullet.
But in this case, what you're probably talking about is getting fired, at minimum. Probably your career in the National Football League being significantly impacted, if not ended forever.
So here's what can possibly happen. Everybody says, don't know, didn't do it, and they go to the next guy, didn't do it. So everybody says they didn't do it. Now the NFL has the evidence that points the direction that they did it. So what can they do at this point? I'm sure they can sit down with Robert Kraft. Who, again, if there's one guy Bill Belichick answers to.
There's only one. There's only one person.
He's answering to Robert Kraft. So you sit down Robert Kraft, and, much like as a parent, you talk about with your kids who aren't fessing up how you're going to punish them. You talk about that with Robert Kraft. You say, listen, everybody's denying it. We know it happened. So here's the deal. If this is how it's going to be, we are hammering you. Unless we find out truthfully what went on. So you may want to go down the stairs, get involved, find out what's going on,
right.
And then the punishment won't be as much. Because what do we always say when we talk about NCAA violations? The cover-up is worse than the crime itself.
Right.
So that could be a way, just as a parent would probably pull aside the oldest and start to explain situations, you do that with the boss, with Robert Kraft, and you say, this is... If we know it, we feel it happened. Again, we're presuming here, but this is the fun. We can do this. Is we believe this happened. Nobody's admitting to it, so you're getting hammered. And if you can get people to let us know how it happened, it can be less. That could be a way, right?
Of course.
That could be a way.
I don't think that would be the tone of the conversation with Kraft.
I'm just making it
yes,
a little more
dramatic. Your point is a well-taken point.
I want to sound dramatic.
No, you go to him and you say, look,
yeah.
I don't know if they call each other Bob or if they call each other Mr. Kraft.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure it's Bob.
It probably depends on who it is that's having this conversation with Mr. Kraft.
At some point, you got to believe Roger may. If it gets to that point.
If it gets to that, then yes, I believe Roger Goodell. And look, there are pictures all over the internet of Roger Goodell having dinner at Robert Kraft's house on Saturday night, the night before this game. There's nothing wrong with them being friendly. He plays golf at Augusta with I forget which of the owners now, but that came up. Which of the owners was he playing golf with at Augusta? That came out. I forget now, but it doesn't matter. The point is, there's nothing wrong with him doing any of those things.
No, not.
But what it doesn't do is it doesn't serve well his case if it appears as though he goes soft on the Patriots.
Well, that's exactly right.
So there's a lot of pressure in this case, I think, on Goodell to go a little harder.
Added to the fact that they're a repeat offender.
Correct.
Right?
With the history. And it was Steve Bisciotti who was playing golf.
They're repeat offenders. So, again, we have to quickly separate.
But now he goes to Kraft. I'm sorry, but let me just say, he doesn't say either find this out or I'm hammering you.
No.
But he goes and he says, listen, what are we going to do here? I went downstairs and your four guys said no. Now, let's remember who Robert Kraft is, okay? When we were there on Halloween, we were dressed up on Halloween as Belichick and Brady, and I was wearing actual game stuff from Tom Brady. I cannot, by the way, vouch to how inflated the ball was that they gave me, but I was wearing his actual stuff.
Right.
And I had been told definitively beforehand, we all had been, that they're going to need it back.
Right.
Which I was absolutely fine with. I'm not there to steal Tom Brady's equipment.
Right.
My wife, as everybody knows, thinks Tom Brady is handsome. That's become a running joke. So I say to Robert Kraft, well, I have to give all the stuff back on the air. And without even blinking an eye, he goes, well, I'm overruling that.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you forget that these are guys, snap of the finger, whatever I want.
Yeah, because he's answering to nobody.
If they go to Robert Kraft and they say, look, we know that only these four people could have done this, and it got done. He's finding out who did that in a second, isn't he? In a second.
Well, he's going to go try and find out. I don't know, and then we'll see if those people will just tell him the same thing. And you say the conversation.
Well, then they're all gone.
Well, okay. I mean, if you think he'll fire everybody.
Well, you got to do something. You can't just say, well, they won't tell me. So what are you going to do? We'll take a $500,000 fine and a 4-game suspension. You can't do that.
As I said, that's when the conversation may change. Well, if Robert Kraft immediately says, well, if that's what they said, then that's what they said, then the conversation has to be different, doesn't it? From Roger Goodell or the league to Robert Kraft is, listen, we're not accepting that answer. So you're going to get hammered more unless we find out what happened.
I just have to believe between Goodell and Kraft, they're going to find out who did it. The question is, who knew about it?
Yeah.
Who actually did it, I have to believe they'll find out. Because whoever it is that actually did it is a person with very little power.
Right. They were told
no one
it.
is giving up their career to save this person. As unfair as that may seem,
they're not.
He is but a pawn in the game of life. Goodell and between the two of them, Goodell and Kraft, they got to find out who did it. The question is, who knew about it? You know what I mean? It's not about who actually did it.
So are we looking for a
No one thinks some 22-year-old kid with a pump did this on his own.
Are we looking for a ball boy to be set up for the rest of his life?
Well,
by saying, you know what? I heard Tom Brady talk about how he likes a better grip on the ball, so I just deflated the balls
on my own.
I thought that would help him.
Right.
This dude all of a sudden, was set up
as an island. It's an interesting thought. All right. Did you hear the comparisons being made by Bob Ryan yesterday? Bob Ryan says Bill Belichick is now Nixon. Now, you chuckle. I also chuckled. But when I heard what he meant by it, I understand it. It made some semblance of sense.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Let's get Peter King in here. MMQB.com, one of the best and best-known football reporters there is anywhere, joins us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Morning, Peter.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Oh, it's terrific, and I've enjoyed your coverage of this whole thing throughout. I was reading your perspective on it here quickly. So let's just start with where you think this is going to go, because what I really want to talk to you about today is the historical significance and your role as a Hall of Fame voter and all of that. But let's just start with whatever it is you know at this point about the investigation and where you think it's heading and how quickly you think we'll have some sort of resolution.
I don't think the NFL is going to do anything about this until after the Super Bowl. I mean, that's not a certainty because who knows? Maybe they could have interviewed people and they're going to get somebody to admit something. They're going to find out something for sure in the next 24, 48 hours. But I think it's more likely because I think the mantra that I'm hearing around the NFL office is that we've got to get this right. It's much more important to get this right than to do it in a hurry. So I think you're going to see the resolution of this come after the Super Bowl, not before.
What do you think of the situation? What do you think of the transgression, if in fact they're guilty? What do you think of the magnitude of this?
I think it's quite serious. I don't think it really impacted this game, obviously, because after the footballs were, at halftime, clearly the footballs were pumped up to the right level, the right pressure level. Patriots blew out Indianapolis in the third quarter, so I think it didn't really affect the game. The question I would have is this a one-time event? Have they been doing this every game? If indeed the Patriots did do this, and so I think those are the questions you need to answer. Has it been happening for one game? Has it been happening for 5 years? So I think that is a key question. But I think that there are rules on the books for a specific reason, and even though I don't think that a normal person can hold a football with 10.5 PSI in the football and hold a football with 12.5 PSI, and there really isn't that much difference. I did it yesterday. I could barely tell the difference. But I think a guy who's been playing football his whole life and who holds a football in his hands every day is going to be able to tell the difference. So I think it's very serious, yeah.
Mike Peter came from themmqb.com. That's where I have to go. I guess just mmqb.com goes to a different website. You just follow him on Twitter, and it's just as simple as that. Okay, so now let's get to what will the ramifications of this be, Peter. Let's start with Brady, because he's the quarterback and he's the one who's actually handling the ball. And so whatever it is that is being done, it's being done, we would assume, based upon how he likes the feel of the football. Everything that happens with the Patriots falls on Belichick for obvious reasons. He doesn't really go very far to try and make himself a sympathetic or well-liked character publicly. Brady, of course, has about as pristine an image as anybody in American sports. Will any of this come back on Brady?
Well, I think we have to wait and see what happens in this thing. We have no idea right now whether this. I mean, really, there's so much we don't know about this. That I don't think any of us know whether it's going to come back on Brady. Now, if you find out that Brady's got some deal with the ball boys to let air out of every ball, well, then it's a different story. But I just think it's so early to basically try to really impugn the dignity of a guy who has been crystal clear. He's the Derek Jeter of football, really. And so that's the reason why I think it's so hard to make any judgments about this. But obviously, if he does have a role in this, it is going to affect his legacy.
There are, and then we bring up Bill Belichick, and we talk about he controls and knows everything that goes on in that building. And just because we can do this, we're not doing the investigating, we can presume guilt here and say, if they are guilty, that we had our own Tim Hasselback saying that it's possible, and he thinks that Bill Belichick could know absolutely nothing about this. This could be between Tom Brady, a ball boy, an equipment manager, and Bill Belichick not know anything. Do you believe that?
It's hard for me to believe that he would know nothing if indeed this is true, just because it's the same way with Sean Payton and Bountygate to me. Sean Payton, for him not to know what Greg Williams was doing inside the defensive team meeting, I still find it impossible to believe that he didn't know. Just because Sean Payton passed himself off as a knower of everything, very much a micromanager in the organization. So that's why I always believe that he knew what was going on defense when when the bounty thing was going on in New Orleans. And again, if you ask me my gut feeling is that the head coach and the guy who manages everything in the organization, Bill Belichick, is probably going to know everything that goes on in the organization like this. Is that certain? No. But my gut feeling is he probably did know.
Mike and Mike. Peter King is with us. You can follow him on Twitter at @SI_Peter King. And by the way, Peter, I know you, of all people, will appreciate that now for the second straight day, we are titling the story and have it trending #shrinkage. And as a Seinfeld fan that you are, I know that you'd appreciate it.
Hey, Mike, I was in the pool.
Yeah, I was in the pool. That's exactly right. So, okay, now let's get to the real. This is really what we most wanted to have you on to ask you, because you are a long-standing Hall of Fame voter, and for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So now, however this thing is resolved, let's say at least some of it does wind up sticking to Belichick. So here's a second incident in his undoubtedly brilliant career. I mean, a career that otherwise compares with that of Vince Lombardi and just about anyone else who's ever coached the game. Now, you guys are all in that room, you and Clayton and a whole bunch of you guys who have this. How quickly in the discussion about Bill Belichick's candidacy does this stuff come up?
Well, it's certainly going to come up, no question about it, because everything comes up as it relates to a guy's, as it relates to a candidate's candidacy. But here's the problem I have with discussing this now. Remember after Kurt Warner had the great Super Bowl a few years ago, and everybody said, well, that's it. That cinches the Hall of Fame for Kurt Warner. Well, I said, look, obviously this is a great moment for Kurt Warner, and I really think that Kurt Warner's got a great candidacy, but let's hold on. There's a reason why we let someone's career breathe. We consider it. We think about it, relative to others in history. And that's the exact same way I feel about Belichick. I doubt that I will even be on the committee when Bill Belichick's candidacy is discussed. It's probably 10, 12, 13, 15 years down the road. He's going to coach a few more years. So that's why I think it's so difficult. I mean, does he pass Tom Landry? So I think it's really difficult to forecast how we're all going to feel, if this, if that, if the other thing. And that's why, I hate to take the cop out here, but I just don't want to go there because there are too many things that can happen. And now what happens if in 3 weeks we wake up and Roger Goodell stands up and say, we've exonerated Bill Belichick of any fault, any wrongdoing in this thing? Then so I would prefer to say, once we find out what happens here, then you figure out what happens in his candidacy, because I just think it's too difficult right now to add something that we don't know to a decision we're going to be making in 13 or 15 years.
That's fair. All right, so let's finish with this, Peter. The National Football League is coming off what has been a very difficult year in the front office, and particularly for the Commissioner, Roger Goodell, with many of the missteps that were made and a lot of extraordinarily negative public attention. And now we have 2 weeks of build-up to their biggest game, which otherwise was going to be a sensational matchup. And here is this conversation, which is not just being had on places like Mike and Mike, but is being had on, CBS this morning, and CNN had me on to talk about it today, and everyone in the world is talking about it. From the people you've talked to at the league, just how upset is everyone by this?
I think it's really upsetting to them because I think the one thing that they needed in this year was they needed a game that would finish the year on a very positive note, because the year began on such a horribly negative note. There's no question, you're absolutely right. This is going to impact this game. It's going to impact what is always the celebratory week for the NFL. I think the NFL's really ticked off about it.
Peter, we'll look forward to seeing you out there in Phoenix. Thank you, my friend. As always, we'll see you soon.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Mike and Mike.
You written any books, Gerald?
I started a book. I got busy. I wrote probably 2 pages. That was to let myself know that one day, yes, you're going to finish this book.
See, why because he's scared of you. Because if
I'm not scared of Gerald.
If I said I started a book and I wrote 2 pages, you'd rip me. Rip him.
Your definition of starting a book means reading 2 pages. I've actually used that joke everywhere. I've been doing a ton of interviews this week
your joke.
With the release of my book. Well, as I've made the point, with the release of my newest book, on the literary scorecard now, between the two of us in our 15 years together, I've written 4 books, and you've read 3. That, I think, is the scorecard.
I've written a book.
You did. You and I collaborated on one of our books.
Gerald, I have written a book.
Good.
I mean,
I've written 2 pages.
I told the guy what I'd like written, and he wrote it for me.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
So you actually wrote 2 pages, so that's more than I ever wrote.
You thought a book.
Well played
That's very
by
good.
Gerald McCoy. Terrific young defensive tackle, excuse me, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right in the middle of that defense in Tampa. Very tough year there, of course, but a terrific player. Mike and Mike, our Sports Center is brought to you by Mercedes. It's the big race as the lovable underdog Tortoise takes on the overconfident Hare only during the fourth quarter on February 1st. Tweet your prediction at hashtag Team Tortoise or hashtag Team Hare and use the hashtag contest. You could win your own Mercedes-Benz big race viewing party. Visit bigrace.com for complete rules. All right, Gerald, we have a feature. It's called Next Question.
Right.
So I'm going to just throw a bunch of questions at you.
Right.
Some of them are on the field, some of them are off, and we're just all going to get to know Gerald McCoy
I
a
have
little
a
bit.
favorite question out of this thing down the line that I know we're going to get
All
to.
right, I know where the
one.
fight is going to begin.
Yeah.
Let's start with this. Your team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, have the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft. Who should they take?
Who should they take?
Yeah.
They should make the best decision for the team.
I understand that, but let's just say for the sake of argument, should the best decision for the team have the initials JW or MM? Which do you think would be the best decision for the team?
I don't know. It could be GM. I don't know. It just depends.
Well, did your relationship with Lovie Smith, I'm
Right.
sure, is a good relationship. Will you have I don't mean a serious one, but joking around and throw your input into him or anything like that? For
Yeah, I
him?
mean, I'll throw a joke out there, but I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I don't watch much college football, so my scouting report would be wrong anyway because I would just be basing it off the couple games that I watched, and that's not good enough.
The difference of Gerald and me, now Gerald was the top pick, I was a 10th rounder, is each year I'm sure you don't care if your team takes a defensive lineman because it's certainly not going to affect you when you're a 10th round pick. If my team, and they did one year, took a defensive lineman my position in the first round, so that automatically makes a lower round pick worry a little more, something he doesn't worry about.
So then let's segue to a problem he may have more of an experience with. You've recently become the highest paid defensive tackle of all time. Now Ndamukong Suh is set to get his payday.
Right.
Once and for all, who's the best defensive tackle in the NFL right now, McCoy or Suh?
Suh.
He's better than you?
You didn't think I was going to say that, did you?
I did not.
Okay, this is what I base it off of. If you look at our careers in comparison, he's had a better career. If you look at the past season, it's a what have you done for me lately league. I was second team All-Pro, he was first team, and had the most votes. Automatically makes him number 1.
When they were
That's
coming
an
out,
extraordinarily generous thing.
I
to say.
remember, you remember, we talk about when they were coming out of the
You
draft.
liked him
I
better.
actually said I liked you better.
Right.
I thought and I look at it not as how you play in college, but how your game goes to the pros.
Right.
I thought you were more prepared from a schematic standpoint because he is just an unbelievable strength guy. You even said
He's
it.
what I like to call a mutant. You have a lot of mutants in this league,
Yeah.
and he's one of them.
He's just freakish.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as strength is concerned,
Right.
without a doubt.
Gerald McCoy,
Right.
next question. What do NFL players think of Roger Goodell?
It's an inconsistent thought. Some people are okay with him, some people are not. It just depends on who you talk to.
All right, we're talking to you.
I don't know.
You
I don't
know,
know.
Have you met him?
I have.
Do
I
you
gave him a
think-
big
do-
hug, too.
You gave you
I
got
gave him
drafted.
a big hug, yeah. I gave him a big hug. He's cool with me.
right?
He's cool with me. Anytime I talk to him, I actually give him a hug every time, so he's cool with me.
You've been next question. I'm sorry, but I'm going to get through as many as I can. You've been criticized for being too nice.
Yeah.
360 did a piece on it. Are you too nice?
No. What's wrong with being nice?
Listen, I don't.
Guys talk back and forth on the field. Some guys talk in the Richard Sherman way, and then some guys talk in my way. Richard Sherman is a kind of a noise talking guy. I'm more of a how's your family doing guy. Doesn't mean I'm not going to try and kill you when they snap the ball,
Right.
But I still like to make sure people are doing good off the field.
See, and I like that because I do think that while he's nice on the field, but he plays hard. You can be both. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the game. So I played with a guy in Reggie White. Reggie White never cussed anybody out on the field, but he sure beat them all.
Golic's entire conversation with his opposing offensive lineman consisted of two words. And the second one was you.
Yep.
Mike, next question is brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better prices every day. Here's the big one. You're a huge comic book movie fan. Who is
Right.
your favorite superhero?
Oh, the Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
Incredible
Or
Hulk.
Wolverine. They like neck and neck.
Really? Neck
Yeah,
and neck.
Neck and neck.
Okay.
Would you consider Batman on that list?
Yes, Batman is on that list.
Is
He's
Batman a
third.
superhero?
He's third.
Is Batman a superhero?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is. Yes, he
How's he not a superhero?
I don't think he's a superhero.
Batman is probably the smartest one out of them all.
Brains doesn't make you a superhero.
Anybody who can beat Superman in a fight, you got to be some type of superhero.
Oh, they only did that just to give him some credence to be a superhero. The only reason
Why is he with the Justice League?
You know why?
You know who the real leader of the Justice League is? It's not Superman. It's Batman.
I'm going to tell you why he's in the Justice League. Because if they didn't have if they didn't have a guy like Batman to get captured all the time to be saved.
Batman gets captured the least. You think you got him captured? He throw the smoke and he's on the roof.
Smoke. This is what our superheroes become. Throw some smoke.
Yeah,
that's it.
He's a superhero.
If he had to go through a regular airport, he'd have to take his utility belt off, and then he's done.
But Batman, he has his own plane.
That's exactly right. Batman is super smart.
What is superhero-ish about him? What can he do?
He was on the Super Friends.
He can fight anybody.
Fight anybody.
Anybody. It doesn't matter.
You really think
he will find a way to be in everybody's fight.
Against Superman, against the Hulk, against the Wolverine. That Batman
has a suit for anybody.
That's exactly right.
He can do it.
I love you, Gerald McCoy. Gerald McCoy, best defensive tackle in the history of the sport, knows that Batman is a superhero. He was on Super Friends. He wasn't on Friends. He's not Ross. He's a superhero in every conceivable way.
Yes.
That's well done.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Getting set for this year's Humana Challenge and the Clinton Foundation, it is our pleasure to welcome to Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio, the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Mr. President, Mike and Gerald McCoy of the Buccaneers is with us as well. How are you this morning?
I'm fine. How you doing, guys?
Doing well. We're doing very well. I was just mentioning that I had the great privilege of hosting an event with you and Kobe last year in which you spent, I noticed at one point you and Kobe stepped aside and spent about 15 or 20 minutes talking about some initiatives that he's involved in. So I guess I would ask you this to start. Of all the great people from the world of sports that you have met, which one do you think would make the best president? If you said that guy would make a great president of the United States someday, who from sports would make the best president?
Well, he'd be good. He's very smart, and he's an instinctive leader. Jordan was a good leader. Really smart. I thought a lot of the golfers I've talked with and played with over the years were impressive and good. Jack Nicklaus, I think, and Greg Norman's not an American, but they were great organizers. They built big business empires. They built golf courses. It's, quite interesting to look at, and a lot of the coaches that I've known, I think, would be good presidents.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
What did Pete Carroll do in the last quarter of the last game to turn that thing around? I mean, I think there are a lot of people in politics in sports who would do quite well in a public office, not because they're just inspirational and because they lead by example, but because they're highly intelligent. They, have to think through these things and make instantaneous decisions among several alternatives all the time.
That fourth quarter for Carroll would have got him a lot of votes. There's no doubt about that. So while you were president, you host, obviously, championship teams there. Do you have a couple that were kind of your favorite teams to come to the White House?
Well, I liked it when the Bulls came because Scottie Pippen's from Arkansas, and he literally came out of nowhere to be a great basketball player, so it was nice for me to see him. But I'm a big sports fan. I loved all those teams coming, the men's teams, the women's teams, the pro teams, the college teams. I always really, really enjoyed that, and I could, obviously my favorite one was when the Arkansas Razorbacks came after they won a national basketball championship in '94, but this was for personal reasons. But I enjoyed them all. I found that, I learned something about the sports from everybody who was there. I had incredible encounters with some of the athletes who would say hilarious things to me. One football team came, and I won't say which one, but one of their greatest defensive players threw his massive arm around me, and he said, "I may be the only person here that voted for you."
Mike and Mike, I loved it. President Clinton is with us. In doing some research for our interview, I came across someone had said that as a touch football player, Bill Clinton's best talent was winning arguments about whether or not he had been touched. But when I did get to interview on the stage, you told me I asked you a question you had never been asked before about a heroic moment you had playing basketball as a child. Could you share that story?
Yeah, I was in a church league. You know, I wasn't very good. I was too heavy. But I could run pretty well in short distances. I had good spurt speed. And one night I was the leading scorer on our team. I scored 16 points in a church league game. Never happened before or since. And I nearly dunked a ball. And I was only, at the time, 6 feet tall. I don't know what happened. It just was one of those magical nights. My hand got like right at the rim, and I almost got the ball dunked in. So I figured that I was just, maybe every human being on earth is granted one good night or one good day in a sports game.
Yours happened to come early in your career, but nonetheless, you got one. And you know, Mr. President, everybody, I would imagine, is starstruck meeting you in certain situations. You're a guy that plays a lot of golf. Have you ever been starstruck by playing golf with someone or meeting someone in the sports world?
Oh, yeah. On several occasions I have. I remember in '93, I got to play golf 2 days in a row with Jack Nicklaus and President Ford. We were out in Colorado, and we played this one par 5 hole, and I hadn't had a lot of sleep that day, but I was so excited, and I could hit the ball then. I can't get any distance at all anymore, but I outdrove Jack Nicklaus by a foot. And he looked at me. I could tell he didn't like it. And we were both on this par 5 hole in 2. And I was only 8 feet away from an eagle. I've never had an eagle on a par 5 hole. Ever. And I literally stubbed the putt. I mean, I still made birdie, but it was the worst putt you could imagine. I mean, a 5-year-old would have made a better putt. And Jack Nicklaus looked at me and said, "You didn't think you were worthy of an eagle, did you?" I said, "I guess not." And he smiled and he said, "You need to get over that." You need to get over that. I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Mike and former President Clinton, in just a moment, we'll ask him about the Humana Challenge, which he took over from the late, great Bob Hope, and they do so much to raise so much money. But one other quickly, again, as a big sports fan, we just had the first ever National College Football Playoff Championship. They changed the format of all of that, and it seems to have been a huge success. What did you think of that whole thing?
Well, it worked out great this year. I mean, I think clearly over the course of the season, Ohio State was the most improved football team, and they got stronger and stronger and stronger. And we never would have known that if it hadn't been for the playoffs. I don't think they would have gotten into a championship game. They were ranked 4th of the top 4 going in. So it would have been Alabama and Oregon playing for the championship. And then the people from Florida State would have had a legitimate claim that they were undefeated, and we'd have had all that back and forth. And there was Ohio State sitting there they were just more powerful than any other team. They had more different kinds of weapons and amazing strength and resilience. And, wow, we wouldn't have known it had it not been for the playoffs. So I think it's working pretty well. Now, even if you go to 4 instead of 2, you had the problem of, TCU and Baylor both felt kind of left out and left behind. And I think next to Ohio State, TCU is probably the most improved team from start to finish in the season. So, there's never going to be a perfect resolution to this. But I think at least on the first year's evidence, it was a good deal.
Mike and former President Clinton, who is involved so heavily now in the Humana Challenge, involving the Clinton Foundation, so many different connections you have to sports, but this may be the most direct in this day. So tell us about the Humana Challenge, your involvement in it, the things that it benefits, and why this is important to you.
Well, the tournament itself was getting in trouble a few years ago, and the format was good for the 1950s, but it was too long, and it was frustrating for the players because I think the amateur play lasted too long and slowed down the tournament too much. You had, at one time, 3 amateurs playing with 1 pro. And so, and Bob Hope and I had become friends in the last few years of his life. In 1995, we played, he was like 95 years old or something, and we played 9 holes of golf, and he came within 2 inches of making a birdie on a par 3 hole. And not an easy one. I mean, he could still swing the club, and I liked him a lot, and I wanted to see the tournament saved. And I suggested to Tim Pincham at the PGA that we try to make a health and wellness theme out of the tournament, and that I should do a conference of a day on health and wellness to try to get more people involved, including the PGA, both the players and their wives. And so he agreed to do it, and we just sort of started, and every year it's gotten better and better, and we've got this now our Health Matters initiative, which started in the Coachella Valley where the tournament is, designed to improve the health of children and adults by doing a whole range of different things. We're working in 5 communities across America, about to go into a 6th one in Mississippi. We're making a real difference, and we have an enormous number of really gifted people who come there every year to the health conference that is up next to the tournament. Usually we have it before the tournament. This year we're doing an experiment. We're going to have it right after the tournament. And people make commitments, and they go out and keep them. And we have athletes from all different sports come down and participate in the conference. It's been a very rewarding thing, and I think it's helping America to move to a healthier place.
This year marks the 20th anniversary of when President Clinton played in the first round of what was then the Bob Hope Classic, teaming up with Presidents George H.W. Bush and President Ford. You can watch the tournament starting today on Golf Channel.
And we finish up. I see you're on Twitter now. You have a cool 2.8 million followers, and you're following all of 10 people. So do you read things that people say about you on Twitter?
Oh, every now and then. I got out of the habit when I was president, because I figured I'd spend all my time in a dark room if I spent too much time thinking about what people were saying.
And finally, we have one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL sitting with us. Gerald McCoy wanted to say hello to you. Gerald, go ahead and say hello to the president.
Hello, Mr. President.
He's shy.
I am. This is Gerald McCoy. And it's an honor just to
Hi,
say
Gerald.
hello. I don't have much more to say. I just want to say hello so I can tell my wife.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'll tell you what I think of. True or false, most football games are decided in the line.
Oh, that's true. That's a fact, for sure.
You look at all these games, and they talk about how this great player did this, and this one did that, or this one had a bad game. Mostly it's because of what those guys in the lines do on both sides. The older I get, the more time I spend watching football games, studying the line play.
I tell you, we have 2 defensive tackles sitting in our studio, so you're not going to get any disagreement here. Mr. President, we very much appreciate the time today. Thank you. Best of luck with the Humana Challenge. Again, the coverage begins today on Golf Channel. And it's a pleasure for us to have you on. Thank you, and continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
I'm Lex Friedman. I run my own business, so I know from experience hiring new employees can be tough. With so many job boards out there, you need to post your job on all the top job sites to find the best candidates. Now, with ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 50-plus job sites, including Craigslist and social networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Listeners of this program can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/Mike. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Mike.